What's up, YouTube? Today, this video is about what my thoughts are on global warming and the causes. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that we pollute more than we ever have in our existence. But as far as, is it causing the world to warm up or anything like that, I don't know. There's opinions on both sides of the aisle. I've seen where scientists have taken core samples out of the polar ice caps, and hundreds of thousands of years ago, the Earth was globally hotter than it is now. Who knows what that's from? I mean, there could have been a lot of volcanic activity going on for a while. Who knows? But I believe there are cycles that last or restart after thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years. I really don't know if we as humans know what's going on. I honestly think we're just at the tip. I think we've developed the technology to see what's going on. And now that we can see what's going on, the brightest scientists are, global warming, we're going to kill the planet by 2100. We're going to be killing hundreds of thousands of people. 10% of the Earth's population is going to die, blah, blah, blah. But here's one thing that I do know, and it's kind of scary if you think about it, but we pollute and create a lot more than we did 100 years ago. And I'm kind of hung on the fence as to why. I don't know if it's purely for profit purposes, make more stuff, make more money. I think that's got something to do with it, but also I think it's got to do with giving people something to do. There's so many people on this planet now, people need things to do, or otherwise you're just going to sit around and do nothing. So we need all these people to be working all the time to earn money, to pay their bills, to feed their family. It's a bad cycle, and unfortunately, sooner or later, something's going to have to change. We're going to have to be working towards a different goal as a human population or something, because this trend is not going to work much longer. And let me explain this trend to you. What you're looking at is a water heater that was made almost exactly when I was born 34 years ago. This water heater was made in February of 1984, and I just had to replace it last Thursday. It finally failed after 34 years of use. It finally just rusted itself from the inside out. And you can see it's probably been leaking for a while. And finally, the tank just let go and blew out. That is amazing. 34 years out of this appliance. And a lot of you older folks know this to be true. But younger people think that this is the norm, that things should only last for a little while and then you have to throw them away and replace them. And that's not the case. We used to be able to make things that would last 100 years, no problem. Okay? Over in my grandmother's house, over there, I never showed it, but there's a little 10-gallon water heater. It's like half the height of this one. And it was made, I want to say back in the 40s or 50s. It was in a railroad car. And my grandfather installed it in the house, and it still works to this day. So, we're talking about a 60-year-old water heater that is still working. So, as time progresses, we are figuring out how to make them cheaper and cheaper and cheaper so they don't last as long. And the problem with that is, there's lots of pollution from cars and things like that. But nobody, I don't think, thinks of how much pollution is released when you have to make something. You know, we don't have fresh steel anymore. We've been recycling it for a long time. Have you ever seen one of those recycling plants? I was watching one on YouTube. It takes massive amounts of electricity to run that foundry. They got things like this in there, your old appliances, your old cars, a big old magnet just picks it up, drops it in this huge, I can't remember the proper term for it, but not kettle, but anyways, you know, the bowl, the huge bowl they melt steel in, and it's got these 3 electrodes that come down in there. And I forget what they said. Every time they use that furnace, it consumes like the equivalent of what 18,000 homes would use in one day. Something crazy like that. I don't know. It's a massive amount. Okay, and then there's plumes of just nasty, toxic smoke coming off of this thing. I mean, that right there is releasing a ton of pollution. Okay, then you've got to produce these pieces. Okay, you've got to paint these pieces. How much toxins are released from painting this? You know, this off-gassing as it dries. Look at all this. Well, this is actually filled with insulation, but the newer ones are filled with spray foam. So how much pollution is made by creating that chemical, the spray foam? How much pollutants are released from that off-gassing, you know? And that's just one. Imagine how many of these things are being cranked out on a daily basis across the world, not just the United States. I mean, most of our appliances nowadays, not all of them, are imported. Not like this one, which was made, I believe, what did it say, in Missouri? Yep, St. Louis, Missouri. And of course it doesn't want to focus. But there you go. So, you know, across the world, and I'm sure those factories in other countries don't have as strict pollutions, as restrictions as the United States has. So that's my argument. People want to blame this on cars and Freon refrigerants and things of that nature. I don't believe that's the case. I believe manufacturing something that only lasts a year and you got to throw it away is what's causing massive amounts of pollution. And I'm going to show you a good case of that. Alright, here we are at Exhibit 2. This refrigerator I purchased brand new in 2016. Here it is, almost the end of 2018. This refrigerator lasted 2 years, and it's trash. It's junk. It's not worth fixing. What happened is the compressor in the back locked up. It was actually in the process of locking up. It was throwing the overload protection. It'd come on and run for maybe 4 or 5 seconds, and it would trip the overload. I put my amp meter on to read the current draw, and every time the compressor would come on, it was pulling a constant 13 amps, which is actually more than what the label has listed for the locked rotor amps, which was like 12.56 or something like that. But it was still turning, which was kind of amazing. But so, you know, first of all, it's a horrible waste of money. This was over $450 for this fridge. It was a Mana, by the way. I would not recommend buying in a Mana. It's just absolutely disgraceful. I mean, things come with a 90-day warranty now. Look at your receipt from Home Depot. It says 90-day warranty. I mean, of course, you can pay extra for a protection plan and all that bull, but there's no reason that an appliance can't last 20, 30 years. It's been done before. The problem is I don't think the younger generation knows that it's been done. You know, They're not old enough to know that. But so let's go over this fridge, okay? Okay, this sheet metal came from recycled metal, so it had to be something like, my grill that I'm going to recycle, and this door, and metal has to be melted down, has to be reformed into this sheet metal. Okay, that's pollution released. This has to be painted, that's pollution released. Look at all these plastic pieces. This whole cabinet in between here and here is filled with foam. It's just spray foam, expandable foam. That foam, I'm 99% sure it's not recyclable. So what happens to that? This thing's going to get hauled to the scrapyard. I don't know. I haven't seen the recycling process. I'm not sure how it works. I would imagine all this stuff gets packed into a huge container and shipped to like a processing facility where they basically just shred this stuff. I've seen automotive recycling, and they basically shred it and it starts going through the separation process. You'll have a magnet that pulls out all the steel. Then the conveyor will go through a tank of water, and all the plastic and foam, stuff like this, will just float up to the top, and they'll skim that off. So all of this was, as far as I know, the foam won't be recycled. It'll end up in a landfill. The plastic, I don't know if they're going to, they would have to mechanically separate the foam from this plastic. I don't think they're going to go through that much effort. So probably all this plastic is going to end up in the landfill as well. And that is horrible, absolutely horrible. There's I forget how big it is. It's like a 3 mile or 5 mile in diameter spot in our middle of the ocean, where all of the oceans kind of connect and pass and flow past each other. It spins like this, that somehow all of the plastic just collects right there and just floats on top of the water. And I forget what they have. They have like a crew now of 20 ships or something, like dredging ships, that constantly just pull the plastic out of the ocean, but it isn't even come close to being enough ships. There's more trash coming in than there is ships trying to take it out. So they're fighting a losing battle at this point. So, this is what I believe is destroying our planet, is this kind of stuff. Making an appliance that you're only going to get a couple of years out of before you have to throw the thing away because they have planned for this thing to break down. That's what we have to stop, I believe. I don't think making electric cars is the answer. I don't think making new refrigerants for your refrigerators and your air conditioners and your cars is the answer. I've even heard negative things about solar panels. You think putting solar panels on your house to not use as much electricity, but what about those batteries? You have to have a huge bank of batteries to store the energy. Those batteries are only going to last, if you buy good batteries, 7 to 10 years. Then what? Then you have to recycle them and all that stuff. A lot of toxic acid and lead and all that crap. Or what about a Tesla battery? You guys go look it up for yourself. How much pollution is released? Just one Tesla battery. They said the manufacturing of that cell for that car releases the equivalent amount of pollution if you had say a mid-size family sedan and you drove it straight for 7 years on the freeway nonstop. They said that is the same amount of pollution released in the manufacture of that Tesla battery. So your Tesla car itself is not polluting, but to create that Tesla car, you've already released 7 years of pollution if you would have just bought a regular car and drove it around. So you're not saving any pollution, you're just deferring it somewhere else. Instead of you burning the fuel in your car, which has a catalytic converter, it's made to clean up the exhaust as much as it can before it goes in the atmosphere. You're just diverting the pollution coming out of that to the power plant that has to recharge your Tesla car. And I know with power plants, there's schemes going on. There's certain days those cooling towers, they got scrubbers on them, and they're allowed so many days out of the month or out of the year. They don't have to run those scrubbers, and then the pollutants just going up in the atmosphere. It's, I believe we're polluting, yes, but I think we're looking in the wrong place as to what is to blame for the pollution. So I think we need to rethink that. I believe scientists can see the data and they can analyze changes from now to maybe thousands of years ago. But as far as the cause, I don't think we're getting the cause right. And look at the whole industry. I'm not just talking about appliances. I'm talking about everything we build as a society nowadays. Your houses, our businesses, our cars, everything. Everything is built to only last a little bit amount of time before it breaks down and has to be thrown away. And that is what we need to change. And it's going to be rough because it's going to, like I said, if we build things to last like we used to, they're not going to sell as many of them. And we're going to have to find jobs for people to do. You won't be recycling as much. Everything will take a hit. The people who supply this plastic aren't going to have to supply as much. The people who make the foam ain't going to have to make as much. The foundry that produced this sheet of tin to making this cabinet isn't going to have to make as much. Everything's going to have to be scaled back. But, that's the problem we need to find a solution to. And as far as this refrigerator goes, I want to know exactly why this compressor failed. So I will be making a video of this thing. I believe it's lack of lubrication, but I don't know why it's lack of lubrication. It's either, what we're going to do is I'm going to remove this compressor, and I'm going to cut it open. That's why I leave it standing up, because I don't want the oil to go anywhere in the system. And what I want to know is, did they put enough oil in there? If there is oil in there, does it have any viscosity left? What was the planned failure for this? Did they put cheap, crappy oil in this thing that broke down really fast? Did they not put enough oil in it? Did they design the system so that the oil does not return to the compressor? That's the high side right there. Let's zoom in. Okay, this right here is the high pressure side. Okay, I'm thinking, I've seen other systems, this pipe coming out is supposed to go up first, because as the compressor is pumping, it is inherently going to pump a little bit of oil out of this compressor. And that's why you put the pipe traveling up, so that whenever the system shuts down, the oil returns back to the compressor. But the way they've designed it, I think they're allowing the oil to leave the compressor. So over the 2 years I've had this, it's slowly pumped out all of its oil into the system, and it's trapped somewhere in the system and not in the compressor, and it basically pumped itself dry. So that'll be a future video. We'll see why this compressor failed. I know it's lack of lubrication, but why is there lack of lubrication? So that's it. That's my rant for the day. But think about it, guys. We've got to stop making things so cheap that they don't last anymore. Here's another cheap thing. Look at this John Deere. Okay, this thing is not really that old, and it has just disintegrated on me. First thing to die was the motor. This unit has maybe 250 hours on it. That's all I got out of it. Well, it had 250 hours before the deck finally was shot. I turned it into just a little pulling lawnmower, pull my leaf cart and stuff around. Then the motor, I got about another 100 hours out of it. The motor crapped out on me. It's done. It's rotten to pieces. That's what we got to fix to save our planet, if we want to save it. Because this kind of junk is just going to keep filling the landfills up more and more. Like that plastic. I said, if I send that to the scrapyard, what all is going to be reused? Really? I mean, the seat is foam and plastic. The hood's plastic. I mean, that stuff's not, I don't know, like I said, I don't know the process. If they're going to grind up the plastic and recycle it into something else, or does it just go in a landfill? I'm leaning towards, I think it just goes in a landfill. So we got to stop putting stuff in the landfill. But that's it. Comment what your opinion is. I think we've got to change society as a whole. Everybody in the world. They, have programmed us to become a throwaway society. That's what we got to stop. And somehow we've got to take this into our own hands. We've got to demand them not to produce junk like this anymore. I told the people, I went to Home Depot and I was looking at fridges, and I told the person, I said, I will gladly pay you $1,000 for a basic fridge that you can guarantee me will last 20 years like they used to. And they just laughed at me. They said, no, life expectancy is 5 to 7 years on any appliance. That's what they told me. And I said, really? So even if I went and bought that $5,000 refrigerator with the TV in the door and all that junk, it's still going to last the same amount of time as the basic stock refrigerator. So, that's where you people are really, the rich people are really getting screwed. They're paying $4,000 or $5,000 for a refrigerator, and it's not going to last any longer than this piece of junk. I tell you what, I sure would be mad if I paid that much for a refrigerator and, 2 or 3 years later the thing's junk. Like this one. Around $450 to buy it. Okay, and for me to put another compressor in there, the compressor was $350. So that doesn't make any sense to spend that much money on a compressor. So, all right, YouTube, that's my rant. Let me know what you think.